I now look at the British conquest of Lagos and the expansion into the hinterland from 1861 to 1906. Now, as a historian, I've put this discussion in different phases of development in a kind of chronological order rather than thematic. I'm not looking at things, political development, social development, economic or constitutional. I'm looking at it from periods or phases of development. So we begin from 1861 and then we terminate in 1906. Now we have discussed the naval bombardment of 1851 of Lagos and the conquest of 1861. Two things. Number one, when Lagos was first bombarded in 1851, what the British did was to establish a consular rule. By implication, Lagos became the Lagos consulate of the British. And that consular rule lasted for 10 years. This was a period of informal control. From 1861, when Lagos was now conquered and annexed, Lagos became a crown colony of Great Britain. Now, when Lagos was first bombarded, I've explained before, Britain said, oh, they did that because they want to put an end to slave trade. They were trying to ensure that the laws that were passed in England abolishing slave trade were executed along the coast of West Africa, and that they subtracted that slave ships, were still coming to the west coast of Africa to carry slaves, and therefore they decided to bombard Lagos as an excuse to stop that. Their interest was how to sign a treaty. Now, I've explained in this paper that the king of Lagos at the time of the bombardment was not interested in entering into any treaty with the British. Because once they signed a treaty with the British, it means technically the loss of their sovereignty and independence. And the British, they used that treaty as an excuse to either invade or impose its direct political control over the area. And so the kings of Lagos have avoided signing treaties with the British. However, when Lagos was first bombarded in 1851, Lagos was a flourishing, center for slave trade, particularly in the 1840s. And there was also a rift in the royal house of Lagos. This rift has to do with crisis and conflict in the royal family. I think somebody else may have discussed this earlier, particularly the Kosoko Akitoye affair, which is well known in the history of Lagos. This rift, I've argued in this paper, did not begin with Kosoko and Akitoye, but actually began about the beginning of the 19th century, about 1800 to 1805, following the death of Oba Akitoye. But in the 1840s, it was the Kosoko Akitoye affair that actually created an opportunity for the British to intervene in the affairs of Lagos. In this conflict or crisis, Akitoye turned for help, in regaining his throne, first from the British or the European missionaries, and then through them to Consul John Beecroft who was the official British representative of the British Empire on the parts of Benin and Biafra. Akitoye's approach to the British for protection and help in regaining his throne led to the two battles of Lagos. The first in the late November 1851. These two battles, first of all, in late November 1851, the British actually declared war against Lagos, but they were defeated in the first battle of November 1851 by the Lagos Army, and which means that the British, did not take it very lightly that an African state had defeated it. So they planned another attack in December, a month after. This attack was planned just before Christmas. On the 24th of December, festive period, Lagos at that time, the Royal Navy just streamed into Lagos. And on the 26th of December, which was actually Boxing Day, and that was when the bombardment of Lagos, started. It continued for the whole day, and it was a volley, just one volley, that fell into the palace, and incidentally into the arsenal where Lagos Army kept its arms. Then it exploded. Again, which means by implication that the effect of that bombardment was that the Lagos Army had no access to sufficient weapons. And Kosoko, of course, when he realized that he had lost the battle, he fled. And that was how Akitoye regained his throne with the help of the British. So, incidentally, many historians, from Western perspective, they try to argue that it was because of the slave trade issue which led to the naval bombardment of Lagos. It was actually the Kosoko-Akitoye affair, and what Britain would gain in terms of its empire and imperialism in using Lagos as its center of trade. Now, from the turn of events of the 40s and the wars of 1851, December, by the 1st of January 1852, that was when the British, few days after the fall of Lagos, quickly rushed a treaty which was now signed by Akitoye, who has again his throne with the British. Now, on the part of the British, John Beecroft was one of those that actually signed the treaty. Now listen to the argument of one of these early European travelers to Lagos on why Lagos remained very important and vital to the British Empire. He said, and I quote, that's G.A. Robertson in 1819, "Lagos is one of the most desirable places on this coast for European settlement, as it lies between the great branches of the Niger Delta and the Western trade." So, even before the bombardment of 1851, Britain had calculated that it was going to take over Lagos as a territory because of its strategic importance.